Welcome to Stories of Life with John, Super Ted, and Truzo. Good morning to you all. My name is John, and these are my friends Super Ted and Truzo. Let me tell you something about my friends Super Ted and Truzo. You know how everyone's got to be staying inside at the moment to keep themselves from getting sick and from keeping others from getting sick as well? Well, I know that it's hard for all of you to stay inside as long as we've had to stay inside. But it's really important that we do the right thing and that we're honest and always try to do the right thing by our parents, our teachers, and the people that lead us and try to keep us happy and healthy. The other day, I found Super Ted trying to sneak out of the house. He and Truzo in his arms, trying to climb over the balcony rail. Now, we live in a second-story house. It was a long way to the ground. A good thing that someone was looking out for these two and preventing them from making the big jump down off that railing. Hey, it wouldn't have been any good if they had fallen and hurt themselves, would it? No. They needed to stay inside, just like the rest of us do. Just for a little while longer until everything is going to be okay. Then we'll be able to go out and visit our friends and our family and play. It's a good thing that we're here today. So I want to tell you about honesty. Honesty is the best policy. That means that being honest, being truthful in everything that you do, that can make for a happy and a peaceful life. At home, at school, at work, wherever you happen to be. Amongst your friends when you're playing with them, honesty is a good thing. Let me tell you this story about a young boy who was honest. It came to be that at this particular time, people were traveling from place to place by using trains. There were lots and lots of trains in New York City, and all of them came to this particular station, a huge station called Grand Central, in the middle of New York City. Now, a gentleman who'd been visiting New York City, he had to get back home, and he lived in Hudson River. So he got to the station and he was looking for his platform, and as he got close to this platform, there was a young man who was doing a bit of work at the station. The kind of work that he did was polishing shoes. Now, he needed to do some work to help pay the bills at home. So he called out to the man, "Excuse me, sir, excuse me. Would you like to have your shoes shined?" The man turned to him, looking at his watch, wondering how much time he had before he had to catch his train home. He said to the young man and looked at his shoes, having heard that he wanted to have his shoes shined, and he said, "Sure, why not? Why not? I've got a couple of minutes to spare, not long." "Is that where the train leaves from for Hudson City?" And the young boy said to him, "Sure it is. We've got a couple of minutes to spare. I should be able to do your shoes in no time, and then you'll be able to hop on the train and head home. Come on, come with me." And the man was looking at his watch and looking at the platform where his train was leaving, and just wanting to be sure that he'd have enough time to get on his train, he said to the boy, "Are you sure that I'll have enough time to catch my train?" The boy said, "Of course. If we start straight away, I'll have time to polish your shoes, and you'll be able to be on your way." The man said to the boy, "Can you tell me that when the train is leaving so that I don't miss the train?" And the young boy said, of course, I've done this many times before. You'll have plenty of time." So quickly, the young man collected his brush, he got down and started polishing the man's shoes. He had a bit of nugget that he took out, and he made sure he put the nugget all over the shoes, every last little bit of it. And then he took out his buffing cloth And he started buffing, and time was ticking away, and the man was looking at his watch, making sure that he had time to catch his train. And whilst he was there, he asked the boy a couple of things. First, he asked what the boy's name was, and the boy replied that his name was George Holmes. Did you get that, Super Ted? George Holmes. Are you listening, Truso? Good. George Holmes was the little boy's name. Then the man said, George, where's your dad? Is he around here? And the young boy George said, he's not around anymore. He died a couple of years ago. And I'm kind of having to work now to help my mum pay some of the bills and the rent. Oh, the man thought, that was not a very happy situation. But all of a sudden, he'd finished polishing the man's shoes, and George said, quick, you better get up and go and get your train now. It must be due to leave any moment now. So the man quickly stood up, looking at his shoes, very happy with the job that George had done, for they were beautiful and shiny. You could almost look at yourself like looking in a mirror. They were so shiny. Anyway, the man reached into his pocket and he pulled out $1 coin and gave it to George. While George was there now with the dollar, knowing that it didn't cost that much to shine his shoes, and he started trying to count out change. But while he was trying to count out change, the man had to rush off to get onto his train. Now, George quickly realized that if he didn't get this change counted out and get to the man, he would miss out giving him the change. He ran towards the train, but as he ran towards the train started leaving the platform. He ran ever faster, but the train was going so fast by this stage that he couldn't catch up with the man to give him his change. And George felt a bit sorry because George was very honest and he always wanted to do the right thing. He never wanted to cheat anybody. Truso, do you ever want to cheat anybody? Oh, you're a really honest bear. I hope you're an honest bear. Some years passed by and George never saw that man again. But one day, one afternoon, he happened to be strolling by the street that leads past Grand Central Station. And who did he see? Because George had a very good memory for faces. He saw the man that he couldn't get the change to. Now this is some 2 years later. The man, of course, doesn't recognize or remember George at all. But George thought, wait a moment, I still have some change in my pocket. Maybe I can give it to him now, for sure. So he raced up to the man, and whilst the man was just wandering towards the station, he said, excuse me, sir. And the man promptly turned around and said, yes, how can I help you, young man? And he said, do you remember me? No, I don't remember you. Did you ever come to New York City once before, maybe 2 years ago or so? And the man said, yes, I have been here a few times and probably about 2 years ago. And George said, well, do you remember someone shining your shoes just before you had to catch the train and the train was leaving? Oh, the man's face lit up in surprise as he recognized the young boy George. And he said, oh, yes, I do remember you. How are you, son? And George said, I'm very well, thank you. Sir, I wanted to do something for you because I couldn't do it for you way back then. I had shined your shoes, you gave me $1, and I needed to give you some change. And so George reached into his pocket and pulled out 75 cents, gave it to the man. The man took it from him and was so surprised that such a young boy would remember him all this time to do the right thing and give him the change. Now, this man was so impressed by George that he had to ask him, where did he live? Please, take me to where you live so I can spend some time with you. And so George took him all the way home and took him to the little apartment that they lived in. In the apartment was his mother. And as they talked together, the man discovered that George had to work very hard and his mum had to work very hard to afford to pay the bills and pay the rent in this place that they lived. And it wasn't a very nice place either. It was an old derelict apartment with paint peeling off the walls, mold growing everywhere. But it was a roof over their head nonetheless. But the man looked around and thought, these people are honest people, hard-working. They deserve something better. So you know what this man did for them? Get this, Superintendent Trezo? He took them out to a different place and found a beautiful new flat for them to live in. And you know what he did? He organized all the things, all of their belongings, and had them brought over to the flat. And they got set up in that place and didn't have to pay a cent for the rent. The man paid their rent in the new, clean flat that they lived in. But not only that, and this is why it pays to be honest, people. The man made a bank account, put lots of money in it, and he paid for George to go to school. Because George was not able to go to school ever since his father had died. The family had very little to live on, and he couldn't afford to go to school. He had to go to work. But now George could go to school and get an education. Isn't that great? Now, I've got to tell you though, being honest doesn't always mean that you're going to have such wonderful surprises and get things that you wouldn't believe you could have. But being honest does make sure that you stay in a good friendship with your mum and dad, that your teachers are always happy with you, and that your friends continue to love you as a friend. God said in His Word that I've given you a few little things to look after, and you have done well, so one day I'm going to give you some big, big things to look after. I just want to leave you with something before we say goodbye. And that is, I wonder what your parents think of you. I wonder what your teachers think of you and what your friends think of you. Are you an honest person? I hope you are. Bye for now. We'll see you next time with another story. From myself, John, bye-bye. Super Ted, bye-bye. Truzo, bye-bye.